Every garden center in America has been lying to you. Not with bad products, with a far quieter deception. One that costs you hundreds of dollars every spring and leaves your garden bare and exhausted by August, right when summer still has 2 free months left to run. Why don't you know about the 11 perennials that bloom from June until the first hard frost shuts everything down? Because dead plants are a business model. A plant that multiplies into free divisions, that blooms harder in its third season than it did in its first, that plant cannot be sold to you next April. And next April is when the garden industry makes its money. There are 11 perennials that the annual flower industry quietly hopes you never discover. 2 of them are their absolute peak when everything else is already surrendered. One of them will be producing flowers while your neighbors are raking leaves. And number 7 on this list has a pruning trick so counterintuitive, so contrary to every instinct you have as a gardener, that most people never discover it. The ones who do get a second full bloom season from a plant they were about to cut down. The ones who don't cut it down lose the second bloom and assume the plant underperformed. It didn't underperform. They just didn't know. 11 perennials. 1 planting decision. A yard that produces color from June through October without replacing a single plant next spring. Here is exactly what to grow, exactly how to grow it, and the one mistake each plant punishes you for making. 1. Coneflower. Walk into any botanical garden in North America in July and there is a moment, if you stop moving and actually stand still, where you realize the same plant is everywhere. Not because the designers lacked creativity, because they ran the numbers and one plant kept winning. Coneflower, Echinacea purpurea, blooms from July through October, 4 months. That is not a selling point on a plant tag. That is an architectural decision for your garden. The cause of better and self-care profits. That is an architecture decision for your garden. When you plant coneflower in the right location, you are not adding color. You are installing a color anchor that carries the entire bed through the months when everything else has already peaked and faded. The raised central cone, that dark, domed structure that gives the flower its silhouette, is not decorative. It is a feeding station. American goldfinches recognize it from a distance. They land on those dried seed heads in September, in October, then November, in January, and they eat directly from the cone while everything around them is bare and brown. Your garden does not stop being useful when the growing season ends. It becomes a wildlife resource, operating through the coldest months at 0 additional cost. The colors available today go far beyond the original purple, deep red, warm orange, soft pink, pure white, golden yellow. Plant a mix of early, mid-season, and late-blooming varieties, and the display stretches continuously without a visible gap. Full sun, tolerates clay, sandy, and neglected soil. Soil pH 6.0 to 7.0. Drought tolerant once established. USDA zones 3 through 9. If you garden anywhere in the continental United States, coneflower survives your winters. The mistake almost everyone makes, and it costs them the best part of the plant, is cutting the seed heads down in fall cleanup. Do not do it. Leave every seed head standing through winter. The dried structure is architecturally beautiful with frost on it. The birds depend on it. And the seeds that fall to the ground germinate the following spring into new free plants that you never had to purchase. Your original planting quietly expands on its own while you're doing nothing. Cut back in late February. Never in October. 2. Catnip. There is a plant that solves 3 problems simultaneously, and most gardeners choose it for one of them without realizing the other 2 come included. Catnip, Nepeta X fascini, specifically the Walker's low cultivar, produces continuous lavender blue flowers from late spring through midsummer. That is the obvious benefit. The color, the texture, the soft billowing habit that landscape designers charge hundreds of dollars an hour to specify and then reach for automatically. The second benefit, deer do not touch it. The aromatic oils in catnip's foliage register as threatening before a deer ever gets close enough to taste it. This is not occasional deer resistance. This is deer that turns at the approach stage, operating every day, every night, all season, without a single application of spray repellent that washes off in the first rain, and needs reapplying every 2 weeks until October. The third benefit, pollinators work catmint so intensively that the effect spills into every surrounding plant. If your vegetable garden is underproducing, if your tomatoes are setting fewer fruits than they should, the answer might simply be that you have not planted enough reliable pollinator habitat nearby. Catmint addresses that quietly, in the background, while also giving you 2 full bloom seasons and eliminating your deer problem. Full sun to light shade, well-draining soil, drought-tolerant once established. USDA zones 3 through 8. The mistake that costs catmint growers 6 to 8 weeks of color every summer, not cutting it back after the first bloom flush. When the initial flowers fade in late June or early July, the instinct is to leave the plant alone because cutting it back looks severe. Resist that instinct. Cut the entire plant back by half. It looks alarming for 10 days. Then new growth pushes up from the base, and within 5 weeks, you have a second flush of bloom as rich and full as the first. Skip that cut, and you get one weakening display that fades into straggly growth by August. Make the cut, and you get 2 full seasons from one plant. That is the entire difference. 3. Black-eyed Susan. There is a plant blooming right now in abandoned lots across America, along highway medians, around the foundations of empty houses, where nobody waters, nobody fertilizes, nobody does anything at all, and it comes back every single year, blooming as reliably as it did the first time it was planted. That is the most honest description of what Black-eyed Susan is. Not a cultivated flower that tolerates neglect. A wild flower that has been growing on this continent since before anyone was selling it in a part that happens to be available for purchase at your local garden center for $9. Rudbeckia fulgida, goldsturm, the cultivar that university studies confirmed blooms longer and more prolifically than the standard species, produces golden yellow petals around a dark chocolate center, so saturated, so electric in afternoon light, that photographs of it consistently fail to capture what it actually looks like in a garden. You have to stand next to it at 4 in the afternoon to understand why people stop their cars. It blooms from late June through October, 4 months. Right through the heat of August, when most summer plants have already exhausted themselves and stopped. When your neighbor's gardens are brown and finished in late summer, Black-eyed Susan is hitting its stride. Full sun, minimum 6 hours. Coarse soil, clay soil, sandy soil, it handles all of it. pH 6.0 to 7.0. Drought-tolerant after establishment, USDA zones 3 through 9. It spreads 2 ways simultaneously. Underground rhizomes expanding the root colony, and seed heads dropping seeds that germinate into new plants the following spring. One plant in April becomes a sweeping colony by year 3 that you never touched. The mistake, removing seed heads in fall cleanup because they look untidy. Those seed heads are not dead flowers. They are a winter pantry for goldfinches and sparrows that will feed from them through February. Leave them standing. The birds need them. And next spring, you will find new plants emerging from where those seeds fell. Plants you never paid for, never planted, and never have to replace. 4. Salvia. Stop before you assume you already know what this plant is. The annual salvia sold in garden center 6-packs every spring, the one that gives you a few weeks of color before declining, is a completely different species from what I am describing. That plant is designed for one season. This one is designed for a gardening life. Perennial salvia produces deep violet to purple flower spikes on upright stems that hold their color from the moment the flowers open in late May through every heat wave, every dry stretch, every test the summer can throw at them without fading. The color does not wash out. It deepens, and it blooms 3 times in a single season. The first flush arrives in late May and June. Cut the plant back hard, down to 4 to 6 inches, and within 3 weeks, a fresh set of stems emerges. A full second flush follows in midsummer. Cut it back again, and many plants produce a third bloom in early fall. 3 complete bloom cycles from one plant in 1 year. No other commonly available perennial delivers that return for the space it occupies. Full sun, well-draining soil, drought-tolerant, pH 5 to 7.0, USDA zones 4 through 8, genuinely deer-resistant, not occasionally tolerated, but reliably avoided because the aromatic foliage is deeply unappealing to deer. The mistake is hesitating on the cutback because it looks too drastic. Most gardeners trim lightly when they should cut aggressively. A light trim produces weak regrowth and a half-hearted second bloom. A hard cut to 4 inches produces a full second flesh indistinguishable from the first. The severity of the cut is the entire secret. 5. Daylily. Every individual daylily flower lasts exactly 1 day. That fact sounds like a weakness. It is actually the engineering behind months of continuous color. Each flowering stem carries multiple buds that open in sequence over several weeks. While one flower closes, the next opens. The display is not a single burst followed by silence. It is a rolling production that continues for weeks from a single established clump. Plant a mix of early, mid-season, and late varieties, and the bloom sequence extends from early summer through mid-fall. Beyond the flowers, the dense grass-like foliage that remains between bloom periods is thick enough to suppress weeds in the surrounding soil. Daylilies are working for your garden even when they are not flowering. Every 3 to 5 years, divide the clump. One original plant yields 8 to 12 divisions. At current nursery prices, that one $10 purchase becomes $80 to $120 worth of free plants from a single morning with a garden fork. The math compounds year after year. Full sun to partial shade. Soil pH 6.0 to 6.5. USDA zones 3 through 10, the widest hardiness range of any plant on this list. One critical exception, daylilies are acutely toxic to cats. Every part of the plant, including the pollen. If cats spend time in your garden, skip this one or fence it completely. The mistake that costs daylily growers the most is removing the foliage immediately after the bloom period ends. Those leaves are actively photosynthesizing, sending energy back into the root system and building the reserves that fuel next year's bloom display. Cut them back after the first hard frost, not before. Every week of early removal is energy that never reaches the roots. 6. Blanket flower. Most flowers ask for good soil, reasonable watering, some care. Blanket flower, Diardia x grandiflora, does the opposite. Give it rich soil and too much water, and it produces floppy, weak growth that falls open at the center and underperforms. Put it in your worst, most neglected, driest spot, and it responds with months of blazing red and gold that outperforms everything around it. This is the heat lover's answer to a problem every summer gardener faces: the brutal weeks of July and August, when temperatures climb and most flowers simply stop. Blanket flower accelerates in that heat. It blooms hardest in the conditions that end every other plant season. The flower form, concentric rings of red and gold, sometimes with serrated petal edges, looks almost tropical. It photographs brilliantly. It holds color even in direct afternoon sun that would bleach anything more delicate. Full sun is non-negotiable. Average to poor, well-draining soil. Drought-tolerant. pH 6.0 to 8.0. USDA zones 3 through 9. The mistake, planting it in amended, fertile garden beds. Rich soil is blanket flower's enemy. It produces lush, soft growth that cannot support its own weight and bone sparsely. Lean soil, low water, full sun, those are not compromises. Those are the ideal conditions. Plant it in your worst spot. Watch it outperform everything you planted with care. 7. Shasta Daisy. Here's the counterintuitive pruning secret I mentioned at the beginning, the one most gardeners never discover. Shasta Daisy, Leucanthemum x superbum, blooms prolifically from early summer through midsummer, with those classic white petals around a bright yellow center that has anchored cottage gardens for over a century. When that first bloom flush ends, the instinct is to either leave the spent flowers standing or cut the whole plant back for tightness. Neither is the right move. Deadhead the spent blooms promptly and continuously throughout the season. Remove each flower as it fades. This signals the plant that its reproductive mission is incomplete. It responds by producing more buds, more flowers. A second full flush that many gardeners never see because they either stopped deadheading or cut the plant back too early. The Shasta Daisy that gets cut for bouquets, and it makes an exceptional cut flower that fills a room, is also the Shasta Daisy that blooms longest. Cutting for arrangements is a form of aggressive deadheading. The plant does not experience it as loss. It experiences it as instruction to keep producing. Full sun, moist, well-draining fertile soil. pH 5.5 to 7.0. USDA zones 4 through 9. Choose mildew-resistant cultivars. Becky and Snowcap both have excellent track records across American growing zones. The mistake: cutting the entire plant back to the ground when the first flush finishes. You lose the second bloom completely. Deadhead individual spent flowers instead. Keep removing them as they fade. The plant will keep producing until frost stops it. 8. Coreopsis. If you have a spot in your yard that has defeated every plant you have tried, too sunny, too dry, too neglected, this is the plant that was built for exactly that spot. Coreopsis, particularly Coreopsis verticillata and the moonbeam cultivar, blooms from June through October on almost no water in soil that would discourage most other flowering perennials. Bright yellow or soft butter yellow flowers cover the plant so completely at peak bloom that the foliage disappears beneath them. The effect from a distance is a solid mass of color that holds from midsummer straight through the season. The threadleaf varieties are particularly fine-textured, which makes them work as a contrast plant next to coarser perennials. They add lightness and movement to a border without taking up significant space. Full sun. Poor to average, well-draining soil. Drought-tolerant once established, seriously drought-tolerant, not just tolerant of briefly dry conditions. pH 5.5 to 7.0. USDA zones 4 through 9. Deadhead throughout the season to extend bloom and prevent self-seeding if you do not want the plant to spread. If you do want it to spread, leave the seed heads. The mistake is overwatering or over-amending the soil. Like blanket flower and Russian sage, Coreopsis performs better hungry and dry than well-fed and wet. Rich, moist soil produces weak-stemmed plants that flop and bloom poorly. Neglect is not a failure with this plant. Neglect is the correct technique. 9. Penstemon. There is a moment in midsummer when a hummingbird hovers 2 feet from your face while you are sitting in your own backyard. If you have never experienced it, you do not yet understand what penstemon does for a garden. Penstemon, the native beard tongue, produces tubular flowers in red, pink, purple, and white on upright stems specifically shaped for hummingbird feeding. The flower architecture is not accidental. It is a co-evolution between this plant and the birds that feed from it. The beak fits. The bird returns. Every day of the bloom season, if you have planted enough penstemon to make your yard worth visiting. Beyond hummingbirds, penstemon is one of the most important native plant species for specialist bees. Bees that have evolved to work specific native flowers and cannot substitute with imported garden center plants. Planting penstemon is not just aesthetics. It is ecological restoration happening in your backyard. Blooms from late spring through midsummer, with some varieties extending into fall. Full sun to light shade. While draining soil, excellent drainage is non-negotiable. pH 6.0 to 7.0. USDA zones 3 through 8, depending on species. Foxglove penstemon and Rocky Mountain penstemon are two of the most widely adapted for American home gardens. The mistake: planting penstemon in heavy clay soil that holds moisture. It will root rot within a season. If your soil is heavy, amend it aggressively with coarse sand and grit before planting, or build a raised bed. Get the drainage right, and penstemon will reward you with one of the most wildlife-active plants in your entire garden. 10. Aster. Most perennials peak in June and July. By September, options are thin. The garden that looks spectacular in midsummer now looks tired, and the gap between what the season was and what it is now feels wide and irreservable. Aster closes that gap. New England aster, Symphyiotrichum novae Angliae, does not just bloom in fall, it explodes in fall. When the first cool nights arrive and everything around it is slowing down, aster accelerates. Deep violet purple, rich lavender, bright pink, and pure white flowers appear in September and October in colors so saturated, so intensely pigmented, that they look almost artificially vivid against the golden and brown landscape surrounding them. This is also one of the last reliable nectar sources for monarch butterflies before they complete their migration to Mexico. Research from Monarch Watch documents New England aster as a critical late-season fueling station on the eastern and central flyways. The asters in your garden are not decorative at that point. They are infrastructure for a migratory species. Full sun, average to moist soil, pH 5.5 to 7.0. USDA zones 3 through 8. In late May, pinch every stem back by half. In late June, pinch back by half again. Those two cuts create a plant with dramatically more branching, more flower stems, and a compact self-supporting mound that does not need staking. Gardeners who skip the pinching get a plant that flops open and produces a fraction of the flowers it was capable of. 2 pinches. That is the entire difference between a disappointing fall asterisk and a fall spectacle that stops every person who walks past your yard. 11. Balloon flower walk. Past it at the garden center, and you might not stop. The tag says Platycodon grandiflorus. The name means nothing. The plant in the pot looks modest in spring before bloom. You keep walking. That is the mistake most gardeners make with balloon flower. And it is the reason this plant remains one of the most overlooked long bloomers available to American home gardeners, while also being one of the most rewarding once you understand what it does. The buds are the reveal. Before the flower opens, it inflates into a perfect 5-sided balloon, an architectural form so precise, so distinctly geometric, that it looks designed rather than grown. Children cannot walk past it without reaching out. Adults stop mid-conversation. The balloon opens into a wide, star-shaped blue-purple flower with veined petals and a white center, and it blooms from midsummer through September on a plant that asks for almost nothing. True blue flowers are rare in the perennial world. Genuinely rare, not lavender blue, not purple, but the actual blue that balloon flower produces in sentimental blue and astro blue cultivars. If you have been trying to achieve that color combination, blue flowers against green foliage in summer, this is the plant that delivers it reliably. Full sun to partial shade, well-draining soil. pH 5.5 to 7.5. One of the most pH-forbidding ranges on this list. USDA zones 3 through 9. Once established, it is remarkably drought-tolerant. The root system goes deep, anchoring the plant through dry spells that would stress shallower-rooted perennials. One important note: balloon flower is slow to emerge in spring, later than almost everything else in the garden. If you dig in the spot in April because you see nothing and assume the plant died over winter, you have just destroyed a plant that was about to emerge. Mark the location. Wait until late May before concluding anything. It will come. The mistake: giving up too early in the season, either in spring when the plant is slow to emerge, or midsummer when bloom has not yet peaked. Balloon flower rewards patience the way few perennials do. Let it establish for 2 full seasons before judging it. By year 3, it is one of the most reliably beautiful things in the garden. Here is what these 11 plants have in common, and it is worth saying plainly before this video ends. Every one of them was bred or selected for longevity, for resilience, for the ability to come back stronger each spring than the year before, to expand into free divisions, to feed birds and pollinators and soil biology while they do it. None of them were designed to be replaced annually. None of them require a return trip to the garden center next April. The model that built the annual flower industry, sell plants that die, rely on customers returning every spring, designed for appearance over performance, is simply not the only way to garden. It is just the way that generates recurring revenue for the companies that shaped what you see on those shelves in April. You are now holding a different list. 11 plants that bloom from June through October, come back every year, multiply into free divisions, and produce a garden that gets measurably better, more colorful, more wildlife active, more structurally sound, with every season you leave it in place. Plant once, tend it through the first establishment season, then step back and watch what your garden becomes. If this video gave you even one plant you were not already growing, share it with one gardener in your life who is still replacing annuals every spring. They do not need another bag of petunias. They need this list. And before you go, drop a comment below. Tell me which of these 11 you are planting first, and tell me what state you are gardening in. I read every one. Your answer shapes what comes next.